Hello, my name is Okboko Chisum Cynthia, and I will be talking about what I termed as internalized racism, reflections on hair relaxer usage. So, up until September ending 2023, the concept of racism had never resonated with me. My interaction to the word racism was merely limited to textbook conceptualization of racist theories, racist history, and the general knowledge that racism existed. Yes, I had seen videos and read stories of people who had been victims of racism on social media. However, to me, the notion seemed far away, distant from where I was. I remained in this bubble of emotion for a long time until I moved to the US in September of 2023 to study for a master's degree in social work. At this point, discussions in my class prompted a crack in my safe bubble, and this bubble has continued to grow on a daily basis, so much so that I have transitioned from thinking that racism is far away to beginning to realize that over the course of my life, I had come to internalize concepts of white supremacy and internalized racism. I am even more shocked at how these concepts are entangled around evenly, seemingly mundane aspects of my life. For instance, backtracking to August 2023, I collected my visa from the US Embassy in my home country and proceeded to make a list of things I would be traveling with. My list majorly included warm clothes, shoes, socks, caps, some food items, my documents, medications, creams, deodorants, perfume, a few cosmetics, and lastly, my hair care products. My hair care products majorly consisted of wigs, weave-ons, hair extension, hairpins, hair gels, hair creams, hair bands, brushes, hair comb, and a lot of hair relaxers. The startling amount of hair relaxer I packed had my husband questioning why I was trying to use relaxers to fill up my bag. The interesting piece of the story is that I had a friend visit me just 48 hours before my flight, and the only gift item she brought for me were more hair relaxers, even though I had not previously mentioned that I wanted relaxers to her. Even more interesting is that at the time, her gift made sense. Her gift made so much sense that it had us both excited because then I was adequately prepared to manage and supposedly care for my hair when I arrived in the United States. I did not realize that I was boxing myself to fit into a certain classification or stereotype that I had unconsciously come to accept as the standard of what a hair well cared for should look like. More so, unaware to me at this point was the amount of stress this was causing me, so much so that I had gathered enough relaxers to last me my entire stay in the United States because I was worried about sticking out because my hair was unkept. Sadly, I did not even realize that my conceptualization of unkept when thinking about my hair referred to its natural state and texture, void of any chemical to straighten or flatten it or make it lighter or fluffier. Now, Bevan 2020 in page 1 defines internalized racism as the situation that occurs in a racist system when a racial group oppressed by racism supports the supremacy and dominance of the dominating group by maintaining or participating in the sets of attitudes, behaviors, social structures, and ideologies that undergird the dominating group's power. Using my hair as a focal point, I had clearly been participating and maintaining the ideology that European hair standards were superior, thus implicitly implying that Europeans were superior, so much so that I wanted to look like them, so that I can be perceived to be on the same standard or level or perhaps equal to them. Sadly, I have held this notion all my life, even though I am just coming in through this awareness. I look back to when I was a little girl and some of the mother-daughter time spent was with my mother applying Venus relaxer on my hair. I remember how I would need to wear the relaxer for at least 1 hour, even though it says 15 to 20 minutes on the pack, because my hair texture was stubborn as mom would describe it, and it will require a longer time to achieve the anticipated result. I remember how my scalps were always left with so much bonds, leaving me in pains, crying, and it would always require mom to hold me tightly for me to be still enough for the relaxer cream to be washed off my hair after wearing it for a long time. Yet, in all of these times, I have never stopped to ponder why. Why must I relax my hair when clearly, as Emma puts it, the hair on my head is not programmed to work that way? Why have I actively participated in inflicting pain on myself to meet a standard that serves no personal purpose to me except to make me be perceived in a sense like my colonial masters? Bevan 2020, in page 1 opinions, that internalized racism is a primary assault on our love for ourselves and others. She says, and I quote, I understand love here as our ability to care for ourselves and each other, spiritually, emotionally, physically, and intellectually, and to do it in a way that does not split us from ourselves, that does not split our bodies from our minds, split our spirits from our emotion, split an individual from the community. Analyzing Bevan's conceptualization opens another cankerworm for me about how much I can say I love myself when I have actively participated in fostering dominating norms that have actually worked against my authentic self. Bevan stresses that internalized racism should be looked at as a systemic oppression focused on constructing distorted construct of people of color, interconnected between concepts of decision making, resources, and standard. With regards to decision making, Bevan 2020 explains that due to racist construct, people of color do not have the ultimate decision making power over the decisions that control their lives and resources because they have been made to think that white people know more about the needs, about what needs to be done for us than we need or than we do. On an interpersonal level, Bevan notes that this results in colored people not supporting each other's authority and power, especially if it is in opposition to the dominating racial group. With regards to resources, Bevan broadly defines these as money, time, and salaried work. Bevan explains that they are unequally in the hands and under the control of white people. And via the lens of racism and internalized racism, people of color have been programmed to think along the lines and path of servitude, serving while resources for their own communities are controlled by others. Bevan notes that this is because structurally there's a system in place that rewards people of color who support white supremacy and power and punishes those who do not. In support of Bevan's notion, Tariami 2016 writes that one of the reasons that black women chemically straighten their hair is in a bizarre attempt to acquire psychosocial status associated with socially being white. This is indicative of underlying systems and structures supporting racial perpetuations. For instance, in a podcast by Dabari on Good Morning Africa, sorry, for instance, in a podcast by Dabari on Good Morning America in 2021, I quote, in the US between 17 to 1800s, people with kinky hair and darker skin were more likely to work in the fields. In the 1980s, head hotels and airlines were sued for banning braids in employees. In 2001, FedEx fired 7 employees for wearing dreadlocks. In 2014, Latin McNichol was sent home from her restaurant position for wearing her hair in a cornrow. In 2016, Akila was sent home from her restaurant position for wearing her natural hair, in a bun. In 2014, the US Army rather, issued a policy that banned traditional black hairstyles, including cornrows, twists, dreadlocks, and all of which are natural protective hairstyles for hair types associated with people of color, only to reverse this law in 2017 to allow for hair inclusion. In 2014, Beyonce and Jay-Z were criticized online because their 2-year-old daughter Blue Ivy was making appearances in her natural hair. An online commentator or commenter rather even goes as far as likening her child's hair to that of a sheep, an animal. The commenter states, and I quote, No child whose mother spends thousands of dollars on her hair should live life looking like a sheep. In 2016, DeAndre Arnold, a black student who was suspended and told he could not walk at his high school graduation because his locks were too long and would not meet regulation if he were to wear them down. However, worthy of note was that at the point he was wearing his locks up and they met regulation, but still he had to cut it. In 2018, Brittany Noble, a former news anchor in Mississippi, states that her boss told her hair was the problem. I quote, "Your hair is the problem. It is unprofessional and is equivalent to wearing a baseball cap to a grocery store. The viewers need to see a beauty queen." She filed a complaint related to hair discrimination and was fired 1 month later from her place of work. Still in 2018, a referee in New Jersey forced Andre Johnson, a black high school student, to cut off his locks before competing in a wrestling match. Now in 2020, the Crown Act, which is basically an acronym for creating a respectful and open world for natural hair, was approved in California and adopted by a few states, some of which include New Jersey, Colorado, Washington, Maryland, and a few others. Now, this act made it to the United States House of Representatives, but it never made it to the state Senate, thereby limiting this act to just a state law and not a federal law. Now, a video by PBS NewsHour in 2021 seeking opinions on hair discrimination and its impact on Black Americans in 2021 post the Crown Act reveals fears, concerns, insecurities connected with wearing natural hairstyles associated with people of color to work because they may not be taken seriously or respected by their colleagues or supervisors. Perhaps because these natural hairstyles of colors were associated with being poor, potentially dealing drugs, were associated with being potentially dangerous, or being less or of no good. Now, tilting my lens towards media. Media is another major institution that has been used to enact racist ideologies and systems by socializing people of color along the lines of white supremacy, resulting in internalization of such ideologies. So, if the world is a global village and media is my access to viewing the world, constant reflections of European hair values and other European values frames my mind into believing that such is the standard and exception. And when I look at myself and my hair falls short of portrayed expectations, I become pressured into doing anything to meet expectations as portrayed by the media. And yet, I sit here wondering why my hair culture around relaxer, where did it come from? Clearly the media. Perhaps the institutions perpetuating it. I sit here wondering why it has taken me this long to ask why. And now the answer is glaringly clear. Now, Lamar, 2018, in his research on the impact of media influence about hair texture and internalized racial oppression, notes that the effects of media messages and their influences have continued to keep African or African American women in chains by the portrayal of European women coined as the beauty standard. That the absence of all altered African American women in media images, he argues, that a group simply cannot walk away from such systemic assault unscratched, particularly if this assault continues in new ways. On this note, I am excited about the Crown Act and what implications it has for Africans and Black Americans in the US. I am even more hopeful for the day this would become a federal law in the United States, as it is currently just enacted or adopted by a few states in the US. I am hopeful along these lines because I have come to learn that because of the hegemony the United States has in some countries like mine, happenings in the US has a ripple effect on a global scale. However, I am worried that like colonialism, which was banned only for post-colonial racism to be born, even though the Crown Act has been enacted in some states, The implicit and explicit biases that people have come to hold about natural black hair have not been abolished. Now, Bevan 2020 summarizes that the hardest but most transformational path for anti racist white people and people of color is the work within ourselves and our communities, the internalized work. Hence, today, I am resolving to work on myself, starting from the ideologies related to internalized racism that underpins my action. And I am drawing up my smart goal for myself. Get what's freeing me from the shackles of my hair is not good enough. Because what I am really saying is that I am not good enough. Specifically, I shall stop hair relaxing and all forms of hair straightening and gradually switch my hair back to its natural state and glory. I shall spend 30 minutes to 1 hour twice a month oiling, conditioning, and caring for my hair with organic products suitable for natural African hair, especially cancer products. I would start listening to podcasts about racism and internalized racism so as to sensitize myself to unconscious racist ideologies I might have come to accept as normal. I shall start referring to my hair as good hair instead of stubborn, and I will stand in front of the mirror every night before going to bed and say to myself, Chisholm, your hair is good. Chisholm, your hair is great. Chisholm, you are good. Chisholm, you are great. Thank you.